Real quickly, let's see who we're talking with today. We have Franco from Omnilane, Andy Cho from Frax, and Ankit from OKX. I think you guys have already met Franco, so Ankit, you want to give a quick intro about yourself?
Yeah, for sure. So, hey everyone, my name's Ankit. I'm a product lead at OKX OS. What we are building is an open source full stack developer platform that can be used to build all sorts of Web3 applications on-chain, any-chain. And yeah, here today representing more of the DEX API team. The DEX API we use for a ton of different applications, and excited to go into that today. So, yeah.
Hi guys, so my name is Andy. I lead ecosystem and strategies at Frax Finance. At Frax, we do a lot of things in the DeFi realm. Right now, we like to call ourselves the decentralized bank of crypto. So we do 3 different types of stable coins. We do our own sub-protocols like permissionless lending markets, our AMMs, which I think we're going to go over today. We have our LSD, and recently we launched our own L2 called Fraxtal, which is pretty interesting. So yeah, happy to be here.
Awesome. Let's jump right into it. So what do you guys think are the main technical challenges to achieving seamless cross-chain liquidity today? Franco, you want to start?
All right. So if I had to say kind of the 2 biggest things that are a challenge for kind of cross-chain liquidity, I would say the first is infrastructure. So nowadays, in order to build or in order to connect 2 different ecosystems, you need a lot of infrastructure deployed. You need oracles. You need maybe sometimes sidechain validators and whatnot. And it seems like blockchains are coming up every day at a faster pace than you can integrate. So infrastructure or solutions that kind of strive or want to connect these ecosystems need to kind of find simpler infrastructure in order to keep up with the pace. And the second, I would say, is liquidity efficiency. I think AMMs are extremely valuable. They feel a big part on decentralized finance, but they also have issues with efficiency. A lot of money is used as sandbags for providing price assistance for slippage and whatnot. So I think if we will have tons of different blockchains coming up every day, we need a more capital efficient solution.
Cool. For me, I think, because you touched on great things as well, I think for me it would have to be security, obviously, and then liquidity fragmentation with all these other L2s coming out. I think in the future there's going to be more than like 1,000 chains, and it's just the fragmentation is going to get worse and worse. And commenting a little bit about the infra side of things with oracles being needed, I think there's a lot of innovations that's coming out. Right now at Frax we're doing something called Borrowed Automated Market Maker, which we're going to launch soon, and it's going to be permissionless. We're not going to need oracles because the liquidity is going to be provided by the lenders, and that's I think eventually, slowly, we're trying to figure out all these things all together. And in terms of security, I think it's always an issue where if it's controlled by like a centralized entity. So yeah, I think those 2 are the main things that are kind of worrisome for me in moving into the future.
Yeah, and in addition to the liquidity fragmentation and the security, the only thing I would add there is just the user experience, right? So like making sure it's super, as we're sort of connecting these different chains and ecosystems, just making it super simple for developers to access the different chains, because we know the future is going to be multi-chain. So a lot of the work that we're doing within OS right now is sort of connecting all these heterogeneous chains, and now we have something like more than 20 networks supported, more than 20 bridges, and access to more than 400 different DEXs. So it's a very sort of like almost like a cat and mouse game of like, a new chain pops up, new liquidity source pops up, we have to quickly access it, and bring it into our API. So yeah, it's not easy, but someone's got to do it, and yeah, we're just excited to open up these APIs to developers too. So.
Great, great. How do you guys see the relationship between centralized exchanges and cross-chain DEXs evolving? Ankit, I know that you guys have the OKX DEX API, so I'd love to hear your perspective and then down.
Yeah, we're definitely in a very unique position with the exchange and the DEX product being so popular within the OKX wallet. So definitely have a good vantage view, what we're seeing on that side. I think the two are very complementary, and in many cases we're seeing that different protocols are tapping into centralized exchanges for the liquidity, and sort of most evidenced by private market makers. And I think at the end of the day, these are necessary systems to provide better rates for users. And I think there are some trade-offs around centralization and essentially how we're sourcing these quotes, but and how we're actually decentralizing this sort of whole network. But yeah, I think as a sort of ecosystem, it's been really cool to see that grow now.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's complementary. It's, we can't deny the fact that it's a lot more friendlier and it's easier to use centralized exchanges for people who are just getting into it. And DeFi and even DEXs, it's always been very, there has been a learning curve for people to just come in, whereas you can just tap into, for example, in Korea or anywhere else, it's very easy and seamless to just go into the market and get liquidity. For DEXs, you require an abundance of things and you need to actually learn how to use it. So commenting on your UI, UX experience, I think that's very important, and that's something that eventually that DEXs will have to figure out a way to make it seamless and easier. And I think that comes along with probably implementations in the future with for example, AI, where you can kind of tap into different DEXs and get liquidity and kind of do these swaps instead of doing 6 clicks and different transactions with just 1 click and choosing what kind of network and what you want just by a seamless click. Making that would be a lot easier, and I think that would bring a lot of users and liquidity from centralized exchanges to DEXs. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for both players to work with each other.
I think they're both competitors, and there could be potentially a relationship for synergy. I mean, there's definitely overlap with cross-chain swaps or bridges. Also, with intent-based protocols and solvers coming up, I've spoken to a lot of them, and they use usually exchanges in order to rebalance their positions for continued serving into the intent-based infrastructure. So that's obviously a synergy, but also kind of an overlap for cross-chain swaps. But I think they also serve different purposes, because centralized exchanges, they don't allow for much composability, so you can't really connect a protocol directly with an on-chain call to something to happen inside a centralized exchange. Maybe that's a good idea, I'm just saying. But for some reason, until now, it's not happening, so cross-chain swaps or decentralized exchanges still are the only way in which you can kind of build DeFi. So yeah, I would say that.
Cool. Franco, I'm glad you mentioned intents. So today, a lot of the liquidity and trading activity exists on AMM and AMM-like primitives. Do we think the future of cross-chain liquidity continues to stay on AMMs, transitions to order books, or intent-like platforms?
So I think one of the earliest idea for DEXs was, I wouldn't say intent-based, but peer-to-peer, really. And then thanks to Vitalik's post, it's gotten to the point that AMM was kind of the definite solution at the very beginning. They serve extremely well for price discoverability and for connecting to peers. So I think that AMMs still are and will be a big part of DeFi. They also serve the purpose of being a great financial product for people that just want to get some interest on their assets. But also, they let's say suffer, or they are subject to some kind of issues that intents don't necessarily have, such as the slippage, the MAB attacks and things like that, where intents kind of separate kind of the negotiation phase from the settlement phase, which essentially gets rid of all of that and allows for most efficient swapping.
And I agree heavily on that. And coming from like a DeFi project, obviously, I would like to think that AMM are the ways to the future. And to be honest, I like to think that we're still very early into exploring and figuring out the solutions for different like DeFi or AMMs or DEXs and liquidity fragmentation. And I think every day we're getting closer. For example, for AMMs, there's a lot you can do with it. Like you said, we're doing like something like TWAM, which is like a time-weighted average market maker, where users are able to provide liquidity over a long period of time and kind of deload their liquidity over a long period of time, up to I think years. And then we're launching, like I mentioned, borrowed automated market makers, and these are some things that a lot of people that are trying to figure things out still on DEXs and automated market makers. And we're slowly getting there, and I think it's every time there's a new solution and we're doing one thing better, we're getting a step closer. And I think eventually and hopefully, it might be a hot take for a lot of people, but I think AMMs are going to be ultimately the solution. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely echoing that. I mean, I don't think AMMs are going anywhere. There's just like no easier way to just launch a market around some sort of new asset, and yeah, I think they're definitely here. I think intents are also, I think seeing a lot of exciting stuff there. I think that it's also important to point out some of the risks with intents, right? I think that relayer networks not being decentralized is sort of a concern, and hopefully that gets better over time. Also, just like you see like so many different intent standards, especially in the Ethereum space. So how does it actually become standardized? There's some proposals around new sort of cross rollup standards to enable more interoperability, and really curious if even the near ecosystem is kind of pushing in that direction. But yeah, there's a couple pieces to watch out for there. But yeah, for the long term, at least for the DEX API, we're looking to integrate whatever solutions out there to, again, ultimately provide the best rates and the highest security. So.
Bridges are, one of the largest categories that have faced hacks and exploits. How do we improve the security standard across the space to make sure that users feel safe about accessing liquidity and improving that experience across chains? Ankit, do you want to start?
Yeah, so I think on the bridges side, whenever we're looking to integrate new chains, we actually do a lot of sort of upfront work. We have to make sure that the DEXs themselves have been audited, and we run internal audits on our side. So I think as a sort of platform that's providing these APIs, it's again really important that we're doing our due diligence. So I mean that's a start. It's definitely not enough, but we're exploring advanced ways to label potentially risky tokens, things that might be honeypots, and just exposing that in the endpoints itself. So yeah, there's a lot of work to do, but yeah, it's not an easy problem for sure. So.
Yeah, for us, I think there's a lot to comment on. Obviously, I think it was the last DeFi summer, we saw a bunch of exploits on different bridges, and that kind of spooked the whole DeFi scene. And that was actually the motivation for one of our products called Frax, which is an in-house bridge. And obviously, there is trust involved, but I think there's a big trade-off. So for Frax, the efficiency might not be the greatest. It takes 24 to 48 hours for you to move assets. But the good thing is that it's very secure, given that you have this formality of trust with us. So how it works is we have a 24 to 48 hour time frame to see if there's anything malicious in the middle. And that's when we kind of close the order. So that was actually the motivation. The only not bad, but the only hard thing about this is for us to support different chains or any other bridges, I think, because we're doing a lot of things, it takes a lot of development work. And there's the question of decentralization. Again, to kind of decentralize Frax, I think it'll take another, I guess, a period or quarter of work for us to kind of figure out. But again, it's a very hard problem to solve, and I think eventually the security side of things will get better. Like you said, due diligence is the first start, and this was another step forward for us and a case study to build. And right now, I think Frax supports a few chains, but ultimately, I don't think it's the most sustainable solution. And so, yeah, that's what I can comment on that one.
Yeah, and my insight coming also from the developer world, obviously you got due diligence and audits and all that stuff, but from a design point of view, just keeping it simple as possible, I think that's the ultimate best way to go about security. The less moving parts, the less surface or error you'll have, and it's ultimately, yeah, it's less probable that you'll encounter an issue. On Omnilane, we're trying to kind of Oracle less, bridge less, anything kind of less infrastructure, and that has served us. Obviously, it doesn't really translate to all the use cases, but I would say in general, just keeping it as simple as possible is kind of the way to go.
Modularity has led to this explosion of chains, but that explosion has led to an increase of fragmentation of liquidity. What can teams launching new chains learn from what the ecosystem has built over the last few years to help access the liquidity that already exists versus further aiding in the fragmentation?
I can go.
Cool.
Yeah, so I don't think I can really help those teams with with a great answer. Yeah, it's a tough problem, and what I see is that there, and this is bad, but probably a lot of projects, because I think like the cross-chain rich and kind of the protocols that are working hasn't I don't think they have caught up the pace of the kind of expanding demand. So I think a lot of projects will see that they will kind of feel like choked. They won't have liquidity to work. They won't have kind of venues or ways to go into their different blockchains. So I wish the best of luck to those projects. I hope that we can kind of move as fast as possible to kind of go for rescue for those.
Yeah, it's interesting because we launched our L2 as well not long ago called Frax still, and we actually did this, and the reason why we did this was because we realized that there's going to be 1,000 chains, and we wanted to be the forefront of it, and we saw that as like a final vision for Frax. But like you mentioned, I think with all these chains, there's going to be more fragmentation, and I think it's a simple like game of supply and demand, and it's going to be. I don't want to say it because we always do, our ideology is kind of positive sum working together, and we are still working together, but I don't think there's enough, for example, manpower or infra for them to support all these chains, right? So eventually I think there's going to be an overhyped amount of chains coming out, and then there's going to be a fall, and it's going to hopefully decrease the fragmentation, but I think that's one of the main problems that we're going to face in the future with all these chains coming out. Yeah,
Yeah, I definitely can relate to that because previously within OKX, we were launching the X layer blockchain, which was with Polygon CDK. So you are seeing this sort of like, at least in the Ethereum space again, like this sort of people coalescing around the superchain, the OP stack or AG layer, or Arbitrum orbits. So as a chain, like at minimum, make your life a little bit easier and at least be a part of one of these larger sort of economic zones. But if you're sort of a DeFi protocol or just looking to quickly access the multi-chain ecosystem, I'd really recommend checking out the DEX API because with something like the widget that we've created, like a few lines of code, you can just access, help people bridge into your ecosystem and again, make it super seamless. So there are like stopgaps before we get to the full-blown interoperability that everyone wants. So yeah.
Great. Thanks, everybody. I'm sure we could talk about cross-chain liquidity for hours, but that's all the time we have today. Please give a round of applause for Ankit, Andy, and Franco.